Hello and welcome to the race 3 at Sailplane Grand Prix at Gawler. Very interesting weather pattern we've got going for the last 3 days. Low, blue, and windy. Not that windy, but it's but they're actually going very well. The races have actually been going very well, but they've been getting round. And I'm joined here today by Tom Leach, who's a member of Adelaide Touring Club.
Yes.
And
hi everyone.
Welcome. Yep. And so we're just at the start of the race now. So everybody's lining up for the start. Now, I have to confess to you all that they did start a little while ago, and we're going to be playing a bit of catch up here. We're going to be watching them as they go around, and then eventually we'll.
So today we're following on Glide and Seek.
So I'll just take you a little bit to show you.
But we're just coming up to the start, and the official start is
where
at
they're actually going
13:20 local time.
But as you can see, they're just
the five gliders are
at the moment.
lining up nicely for the start. It's a very, very blue day. The wind.
This is the task. The task is starting at Gawler and going to the first turn point is at, how do you pronounce that? Lauke?
Uberaui? Oh, no, Lauke's.
Yeah, Lauke.
Yep.
That's just 19 kilometers away to the north, to the northeast before turning 355, just basically north, up to Buberaui,
Yep.
And that's 100 kilometers leg with a tailwind, or pretty much a tailwind, isn't it today?
Yes. Yeah.
And then they've got a crosswind, and then they're coming back down another 100 kilometers back into wind. So the back into wind the last couple of days that has been the difficult leg for everybody. They've usually been quite close together until they come into wind, and then all hell breaks loose as they try and dash for the finish, but also they get broken up, I think, because they're battling a bit of a headwind. Would that be right?
Yeah, definitely. The stronger winds up there today.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are back at the start, and so as you can see, they're going to be taking off starting going to the northeast. So what do you think about the conditions today, being a local pilot here?
It'll be challenging. It's been very cool, relatively speaking, over this last week. We'd normally have high 30-degree temperatures this time of year. It's very unusual weather patterns, and it was also a very, very late season here this year. We kind of skipped spring altogether. We seemed to have a late winter right up till December, really, and even through December, the temperature's been very mild. We've had one 40-degree day, and that's all. And I suspect we're not going to get many more. And I think over the long-range forecast from the middle of next week for about 7 or 8 days, it's going to be 26 degrees each day, which is just unheard of for us at this time of the year. It's normally always very high 30s into the 40s around this time. So, yeah, tricky conditions today. Still the cooler weather, the stronger wind, but it's been a bit the same the last couple of days, really. Just a slight variation in the wind strength.
Yes, that's right. And yes, it is a very strange weather when you think about it. Wasn't expecting to be cold when I come to South Australia.
No.
in January.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
In winter you can expect it, but certainly not this time of the year.
That's right. So I've now left it forward a little bit, and they're coming up to the first turn point where they turn north, just to show you again on the task. Right, so there you are. They've taken the northerly leg, and they're just coming up to that. And they're all pretty much together, even though they might not look it. But you got Zulu in the front. That's Dave Peach, followed by Pete Temple, and Maki Chikawa coming around the turn point first. So how much flying, or how long have you been a member here then, Tom?
I've been a member here. Well, I first joined back here in 1992, and then went solo, and then went away for a while and pursued other areas and started GA flying in about 2000, but came back here in about 2006, 2007, around that time. Mm-hmm. And I've been here every week since, and I'm now the General Airfield Manager here, but I've served on all the committees before and held various positions. So, yeah, I love it out here. We're very lucky. We're very lucky to have a gliding operation here with a really good airfield, but also one that's actually quite close to the CBD, relatively speaking, which probably is one of the reasons that we're fairly busy out here and we have a decent membership. We've got around 340 odd members here, about, very roughly speaking, about half of those gliding, half light sport aircraft. And we seem to be able to function with both those operations quite well with each other. And yeah, we're very lucky, very popular. It's a good place. Everybody wants to be here.
Yes.
Nobody comes out here griping. Everybody comes here because we all share a passion for aviation, be it gliding or powered. And so everybody wants to be here. So generally speaking, everybody's in a good mood, and we all create great friendships out here, and the social aspects are very strong. So yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah, and is there much other traffic at this airfield apart from the gliding and the sports aviation?
We get a little bit, but not a lot. We get a little bit. We're on the doorstep of the Barossa Valley, so we do get a few small charter trips that come in. But generally speaking, it's mostly light sport aviation or gliding. And of course, we have the water bombers for the CFS that operate out of here at this time of the year. And they were here yesterday. There was a fire close by out at near Wasleys yesterday, a crop fire. And that was around about 3:30 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock. So, of course, we give those guys room to operate. We're very lucky to have them here, based here. But fortunately, they don't have to operate here very often. But we were instrumental, our airfield was instrumental in the Samson Flat fires and the Pinery bushfires back in 2015, which were really quite terrible fires and a lot of properties and acres of land lost. But fortunately, the CFS can get here pretty quickly and the water bombers operate.
Well, that was interesting yesterday because, of course, if the water bombers are coming in and there is a fire, they could close the airfield down to other traffic, can't they?
Oh, well, they do, but we have a very good working relationship with them. If there's just a water bomber operating, then they can operate around us. And generally speaking, they don't get very far off the ground. They don't waste time climbing. Right. So as long as they can get over the fence and the trees at the end, they go straight to the fire.
To the fire, yeah.
So they generally don't really conflict with our operation.
Yes.
But of course, if they are operating, chief flying instructors or whoever's duty instructor will have a conversation with their people on the ground, and we can either work with them or we do ground the aircraft, but it's a mutual decision. It's not, they don't just come in and go, you guys are grounded.
Right.
There's always a conversation that's had and we work together. But of course, if we thought that we were going to be in their way, we just wouldn't fly.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, look, the racers have now passed the first turn point, and they're I'm not sure how well you can see from over there.
Yep.
But they're what's the terrain like there, and what are the conditions like you'd be expecting there today?
There's a couple of ridges there, so they're flying up the Clare Ridge and up along the Udunda Ridge, and in between there. So they probably the way the wind's going, there may not be too much rollover going on through there, and there can be some dead spots through there. I've certainly got stuck in one of them before up in that area, but the guys at this level, I don't imagine they'll have too much trouble up through there and picking the areas to get their thermals. But it's certainly a beautiful area to fly over, and of course the Clare Valley they're getting up towards that way is all well renowned for, similarly as the Barossa Valley, as great wine growing regions, and so just some beautiful areas. And yes, the elevation's a bit higher up there, so but not massive. I think we're probably looking about 1,200 feet, maybe somewhere around that area.
Yeah. Okay. And the altitudes they're getting here, they stopped for a turn. Pete Temple just getting into a thermal there, and they're taking a bit of a climb, but they're operating between about 900 and about 1,300 meters at the moment.
Yep.
So, and that's pretty reasonable for this terrain.
Yes, yeah, and of course, if it was warmer, we could expect more.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that's reasonable, and they're up through the valley there a little bit, so they've the ground's a bit lower, whereas on the sides of them there's a bit more height. But no, that's a pretty good flying envelope, I would have thought, for that area.
Yeah, okay. And so what can they expect further north as they get into continually higher ground, I think, as they go further north?
They do, but it generally does get a bit warmer too, so the thermals generally get a bit higher, so they should be able to take some better climbs. The further north they are, usually the better the conditions get,
Right.
and certainly as they get further away from the ocean effectively,
Yeah.
and any influence that might have on it. So you can probably expect their biggest heights at the next couple of turn points before they start to head back south towards us again. So yeah, they should get some better heights up there today, definitely.
Yeah, and I think the maximum that they were expecting was about 5,000 feet in theory, I think.
Okay, yep.
But probably before the end of the day, we assume they might get a bit higher. In fact, it's looking fairly reasonable conditions.
Yeah.
It's completely blue looking out the window. We had a few puffs of cumulus at the beginning of the day, just as they were launching. But apart from that, it's very blue.
It's very blue day today.
Yes, indeed.
Certainly out this window anyway. I can't see out the other windows, but yeah.
So for those of you who've only joined us for the first time, we'll just talk a bit now, maybe a bit through the pilots. We've got 5 contestants at this Grand Prix, so it's a low number, but they're very good pilots, and also they're very competitive pilots, and it's a really friendly atmosphere with just these five contestants, and we're getting some great flying. This is the 3rd racing day, and we've got 3 more to come for sure. So it's going to make 6 races. So it's actually really a very pleasant competition here at Gawler. So the first contestant I've got here is Jeff Brown. He's flying in a JS1, and he's got his home club is Canberra. And he has flown many national competitions and has actually came second in the Sailplane Grand Prix at Horsham a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and he won the first day here, and he came second yesterday because we had a couple of the contestants breached airspace by a few feet, which meant that they had technical land out, which is a bit of a shame.
That is a shame. It is a shame. We're a bit protective of our airspace out here, so it's but that's okay. It can come with the territory sometimes, but yeah, it's a bit disappointing when people breach airspace.
Yeah, I mean, everybody airspace is, you're not meant to breach it. Everybody knows that. But having said that, the pilots didn't do it on purpose. It was only by a few feet because the ceiling convective was only 4,500 feet, and so they needed to get up there, and so it was a little bit of a risk. They're going to encounter the same problem on the way coming home on the final leg today, I believe. When they're coming back, they'll be on final glide. Yeah, but they still have to be careful to miss that Adelaide step. That's what they caught yesterday, wasn't it?
Well, yes, I think so. There's airspace here is actually quite complicated, relatively speaking, to the rest of the country, and we kind of borrow our airspace off the Air Force to a large degree, particularly around the airfield. Yeah. So we do have a lot of steps, and there are some definite gotcha areas if you're not familiar with the area and the airspace. Yeah. But of course, if you're pushing the boundaries to try and get the height to the max height you can too, of course, you're going to fly close to those boundaries as well.
That's right. Okay, and our second pilot, if you've been watching, you'll know definitely Pete Temple. He won yesterday, and he's in the lead at the moment today. And this is his local airfield, but he's flown many competitions. He's flown Sailplane Grand Prix in before, and World Championships before, and the Sailplane Grand Prix final in Vinon, in France. And then our third pilot is Mak Ichikawa from Japan, who lives in Australia, but I think he's actually the most experienced pilot that we have here. He's been flying World Championships. He told me his first one was in 1992 or 3 in Poland, I think, and he's been flying World Championships regularly all the way up until Szeged last August in Hungary. Very, very competitive pilot. He came second in 15-meter class in Benalla, the World Championships in Benalla here. And then we have Matthew Atkinson, whose home club is Lake Keepit, and he is flying a Ventus 2. And he has flown in quite a number of Australian state and national competitions, but he probably has less amount of competition experience of all of the pilots here. But he's certainly very competitive as well. And he came in 3rd place yesterday. And it must be said that after 2 races, the point scores were all very, very close. It's not as if anybody is that this competition is over by any means at all. And then finally we have Dave Peach, who is like Jeff Brown, an ex-RAAF pilot. And he's flown lots and lots and lots and lots of national competitions in Australia, a very experienced pilot. And he's also flying a JS1. And I'll just show you the scores in a second, just so that you can see where we are up to in total. If it will work for me. Okay, total. And so this is the score as it stands at the moment, which you can find on our website, australia23.sgp.aero. And Jeff Brown is in the lead with 8 points, followed by Pete Temple on 6 points, and Mac Ichikawa on 4 points, Dave Peach 3, and Matthew Atkinson 2. Now, if those scores could completely reverse, it could be that Matt Atkinson could end up winning, or that Mac Ichikawa, as he told me this morning in an interview, he said the great thing about flying this type of competition, sailplane Grand Prix rules, is that if he was flying a normal competition and having had a land out yesterday, that'd be it. He wouldn't have a chance of winning this competition. But with the scoring, the way the scoring is in the Grand Prix, he's still right there with a definite possibility of catching up. All he has to do is win today, and he could be right at the top of it again.
So any day could make the difference, which is really good.
Yes, so it does make it for a very exciting scoring. So. Okay, and we'll leap ahead a bit again to see where they are up to. Get us out of the way so we can see where the races are, and they're still heading up on that first leg. Oops, wrong one. Actually, around here, but they're up here past Saddleworth now, and they're as they head up towards the top of the first leg, and they're still very much together, and they're still getting around 1,300 odd meters. There you can see a better view of the entire task. So for us at the Sailplane Grand Prix, this seems like a long leg, 100 kilometers, but I guess in a normal competition it wouldn't necessarily be very long at all.
Yeah, not too bad at all. Yes, definitely, and definitely if we were getting better conditions, certainly have that much length.
Yeah. And so, have you done much competition flying yourself?
No, I haven't done really any competition flying. I enjoy staying in touch with it, but it's not really one of my areas. I prefer just to fly for the fun of it and then get out there on my own a bit more and just and more as a social aspect. I just don't quite have the competitive bug in me that other people do.
Right.
But I certainly appreciate the skills of the pilots we got here this week in flying, and certainly Peter Temple being one of our local members, he has an enormous amount of respect here, and we certainly consider ourselves very lucky to have Pete here because he's an incredibly valuable asset to the club when it comes to education on competitions and airspace. He was our airspace officer for a very long time. His knowledge of airspace in this area and his skill sets with cross-country flying, etc., are exemplary. And
his knowledge of the weather and his knowledge of the convergences and conditions, and his generosity, as so many people do, with sharing their time and their skills and their expertise with everybody.
Yep, and absolutely. And Mandy Temple as well. They're a dynamic duo, the two of them. They're fantastic. And Mandy's always on the ground doing something, working on something somewhere, as she is with this competition. And they're a fantastic team. They do an awful lot for gliding. And they are very, very well respected couple. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And yourself, do you fly sport aviation aircraft as well?
Yeah, I fly gliders. I fly gliders. I'm a gliding instructor and also fly light sport aircraft as well.
Right.
And I enjoy both. As I'm the airfield manager here, generally, when I finish my day of work, usually the gliders are on their way back into the hangars by the end of the time. So that's when I'll just go and jump in a little LSA and go and hit the hills for a little while, and I'll come back. But certainly I try and join in on the gliding camps and things we do. So I think around about April this year we'll be going to the Flinders Ranges and hoping to get up there at that time on that, where we fly around the Wilpena Pound and saw the ridge on the Wilpena Pound, which is always a very exciting and fantastic club event.
Yes.
So that's I always really enjoy those. And it's the social side of things too. We all sit around the campfire at night and get involved. And we also do a trip every year to a camp across to Bunyan in the outside of Canberra. Do a wave soaring camp across there.
So you go all the way from here over to Bunyan.
Well done. We do trips across there. So it's great. We've got a lot of people that are involved with that, and of course it takes a lot of people helping out to organise those events. So that's what we're trying to do and trying to achieve. A couple of good big camps away every year, as well as our local flying. So that's really good. And
at Wilpena Pound or in the Flinders, do you get much wave when you go up there?
Just depends on wind conditions.
But you go
naturally,
up there. You go up there for the wave.
Yes, that's the preference, and we've got, because of the way the Flinders Ranges and Wilpena Pound are laid out. There's a few choices for ridges depending on the direction of the wind at the time. But of course, if the wind is not there, it's great thermal flying, and the views are absolutely spectacular.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we might have a look at the Flinders Ranges in a minute, just to show you on the map, just to show you what it's like. And okay, we're still on the first leg, and the competitors are all still pretty much together. And Wilpena Pound that's Lee Creek, so Wilpena Pound must be...
Yeah, just down around about
that's
here
right,
somewhere.
south, isn't it?
Yeah. So Hawker, so just being around there somewhere. That's possibly it there.
Yes.
It's not really giving the name of it there, is it, on the...
No, it's not showing up on there.
Yes.
But there we are, just for the people who aren't familiar with it. That's the Flinders Ranges, which is north of Adelaide and north of Gawler. Here we are, Clare Valley. And then you get into this mountain range that comes down, surrounded by very, very flat land to the west and very, very flat land to the east. Lake Torrance, big salt lakes.
Or the Lake Eyre.
Yeah, that's right. And this then up into the Lake Eyre area. Which at the moment, I guess, is full of water.
I'm guessing it'd be very full of water at the moment.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough once to fly from Lee Creek and pass from New South Wales over to Lee Creek and up into William Creek and over the top of Lake Eyre when it was full of water. Often it's most of it is salt pan, and then you have this incredibly dramatic landscape of the Flinders Ranges down here, including Wilpena Pound, which is very otherworldly. And you camp in the middle of it, I think, do you?
Well, there's a couple of different spots you can camp. You can either camp in the middle of, just next to Wilpena Pound itself, or Rawnsley Park. There's a place called Rawnsley Park, which is about 30 kilometres south, I suppose, of Wilpena Pound. And we use a strip at a station called Arcapina. Which is a nice area. The Rawnsley Park's a beautiful caravan park, and particularly if you don't need power, they've got a fantastic camping ground for that area too.
Right. And I just noticed by looking in my monitor that there's somebody standing behind us. My goodness!
Like you want to make you jump? Yes. Good afternoon. Hello.
Yes, you've been doing that over the last few days.
Sneaking up.
And we're joined again by Mandy Temple, who's going to take over in a second. And but thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
No, it's welcome, Sean.
It's been very fascinating hearing all about the airfield here and the operations and everything.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so
that's been great.
Yep. And I'll let Mandy replace you in the hot seat.
Beautiful. Fantastic.
Want to go home? Have a good holiday.
Thanks very much, guys. Yes, I'm off on holidays. So
Have a good break.
See you later, everybody.
So that was Tom Leach, and I'm joined again by Mandy Temple, the competition director. So Mandy, what we've been talking a bit about the operation here and everything, and we're looking at the race as it's been unfolding. In a minute, we're going to catch up to it live.
Okay.
But they're on the first leg still at the moment.
No. I see what you're saying. Yes. Because the last leg, of course, is into wind.
That's right.
So we expect him to find it more difficult, a bit tricky.
Indeed, yes. So they're still all pretty much together on the first leg at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're already down there. So we'll catch up with again pretty soon. Okay, so maybe we'll go and get to live now. They all went round the top mark without much difficulty. Then they would have crossed the crosswind leg at the top, which is only 29.5 kilometers long. And now cutting to where they are now, so we're back live, everybody.
We'd rather hope there was a bit of a convergence in that area over the hills around Clare. It can be a bit damp and cold around Clare, and it looks like perhaps they're struggling a bit with the cold weather. Or maybe the headwind, but they're not particularly high, are they? That's.
All right. So they got low.
Well, yes, look, Victor 8's at 1,200 feet above the ground.
Okay, now we've seen this play out over the last couple of days. On the first leg, with the wind behind them, they managed to get up to the ceiling, to the maximum convection, and then they. But as soon as they turn into wind, it all gets a lot more difficult, and we're seeing that again.
We had fairly brisk, strong winds this morning. It was probably a good 15, 17 knots first thing. We had an overnight inversion, which funnels the wind over the hills. We get a bit of a katabatic wind overnight. So when they launched, there was a good, strong 15 to 20 knot wind. It's largely dropped off now. I'd say it's only 5 or 10 knots. Once the thermals start to get going, it breaks up the inversion layer, and the wind does drop a bit. But nevertheless, it's a headwind, and it looks like it's having an effect.
Yes.
Slow them down a bit, spoil their fun.
That's right. So we've got Pete Temple in their lead at the moment.
At 1,000 feet, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, 1,000 meters AGL.
Oh, meters! Oh, that's much better. Oh, I feel much more comfortable.
Yeah, that's right. So they're not actually struggling.
They're not
struggling
as low as I thought they were.
To stay alive.
I feel immediately better.
Yeah.
Let's just get more metricated.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Sean might have mentioned we have a bit of a puzzle every day, and we've got some competition mugs for prizes. So today's prize was to guess the first 3 places in the race, a trifecta. So we've got a whole bunch of guesses up on the whiteboard. We're going to see who gets the mug this time.
And what's the guess this time? The trifecta.
Trifecta, yeah, first 3 places.
Yeah.
Yesterday we had to guess the maximum height, and we were all very pessimistic, and we're around 4.5. So one of the tug pilots, Tommy, has a clear winner at 5,300 feet. They were actually getting to about 6,000 feet yesterday, which was much better than expected. It was actually quite a bit warmer than forecast yesterday, so conditions were much better.
Okay, so conditions are better today, but they're all seem to be progressing quite well. Now, Pete yesterday was saying it's not necessarily the best place to be in the lead in this type of competition, but today he's found himself in the lead most of the time again. Yeah,
Grand Prix racing doesn't suit him. He likes to fly fairly conservatively over a number of days and sort of let other people make mistakes around him.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Grand Prix, sometimes you're obliged to push out, and he will. He absolutely will, but it's not his favourite style of racing. So it'll be interesting. But it's interesting to me that they're deviating a fair bit from track. I mean, it must be a good 15 degrees deviation. So the fact they're doing that makes me wonder if perhaps the convergence that was forecast is in fact there, and that's why they've taken this deviation, because obviously there's a distance penalty, but they're all fairly consistently sticking on that same direct southerly line.
So they've hopefully found out some good air there. Now, also, of course, that's where the wind's coming from. They're still coming from the southeast.
Yeah,
southeast.
So
it's kind of tending to blow them off track as well.
It could be that. Yeah, I mean, generally, tactically, you fly on the upwind side of a line, but there's a row of hills just to the east of them, and I wonder if that is actually forming the convergence that we're hoping it would. The plan was to bring them home along a convergence line into the stronger wind on the way home. So if we're lucky, that's what's happened.
Okay, so the row of hills you're talking about is
the Clare Ridge goes through Seven Hill.
That one there,
yeah,
through Seven Hill, where their famous winery is.
Well, the Clare wine ridge is quite famous, I think. Yeah, the Barossa obviously is closer in, but the Clare Valley has its own area of wineries and very famous. Yeah.
So that's where they're overflying at the moment, and probably overflying that ridge again. We'll just have another quick look. So probably finding the convergence here on
I'm
these
hoping
hills.
so, yeah, because there was quite a strong sea breeze showing out to the west, and obviously we've got a southeasterly wind. They're going to come together, and
Right.
hopefully keep them up in the air.
Okay, so once again we have Pete Temple and followed by Maki Chikawa, unsurprisingly, and Jeff Brown in third place.
Mm-hmm.
These three have been in contention the entire time. Although Maki Chikawa yesterday fell foul of and had a technical land out because he breached airspace by 9 feet. He said
For 4 seconds.
for 4, really. Just goes to show you.
Yeah, he and Zulu had the same error in roughly the same position. They were approaching the edge of a 4,500 foot step, heading towards a higher step. They were just here. And I think they probably thought they were there before they were there, or Dave Peach thinks perhaps he was looking up and inadvertently went up because he was quite upset to discover he'd broken airspace. He's a very professional pilot, he was a military pilot, and he really couldn't believe it had happened. He said he was really careful, but obviously it can happen to the best of us, and anybody can break airspace if there's a bit of a gust and you're too close, if you don't set your buffers as you should.
That's right. Permission denied, patent full.
You're remembering a quiz question.
Military pilot, and he breached airspace. He must have felt very bad. Still, he's retired. He's allowed to have fun now in his JS1.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete Temple is still in the lead, and where is he now? His altitude is only 879 meters. So he's 700 meters above the ground, so that's about 2,000 feet above the ground.
Yeah.
So he'll be feeling fairly comfortable for about the next 10 kilometers at most.
Yeah, they'll be looking for a climb. The three of them together will be looking for a climb. And of course, the problem for Peter is if someone finds a climb behind him, does he go back to stay in the air, or does he keep going, hoping for something for himself? And of course, if he finds something, well, then the others he knows are going to come straight in underneath him. That's
right. That's why it's not necessarily good to be out the front. But yesterday, at a similar point in the race, Pete was out the front, and he found a climb, and Jeff Brown was behind him and a few hundred feet lower, and he didn't have to take a different climb. Yeah, Peter was saying that the thermals yesterday were more like bubbles, more like European thermals. We tend to get strong columns of rising air in Australia, like a dust devil, but yesterday they were saying that's more like a string of beads. I know from the forecast today that the buoyancy shear, the shear ratio was quite high, and so I think that effect will be actually even a bit more pronounced today. So it's not sure that if you come in under somebody, you're going to find the same climb, which makes it quite difficult. Mm-hmm. And then further behind them, we have the other two contestants, which is Matt Atkinson and Dave Peach. Dave Peach bringing up the rear at the moment. He's only at 1,000 meters as well, 700 meters. But look, that was 5 minutes ago, so... Yes, okay. Where's the time saying there? Oh, last position IC, 5 minutes. There you go. Learning all the time on this thing. That's 20 seconds ago. Yeah. And Pete Temple. So we're getting, because they're carrying trackers, of course, we're getting position reports from wherever their tracker gives a transmission, and it's at different times. So this Pete Temple was 24 seconds ago. 3 seconds ago, just updated. Yeah, 3 seconds ago. So Pete Temple is definitely very current. And Mac, it looks like they found a climb. Yeah, they're probably. Yeah, and it looks like they're stopping for a climb. Yeah, all too good. It was really nice yesterday that nobody got a start penalty. Unfortunately, with this wind direction and the airspace, we have to give them a leg which has got a downwind component, and with the maximum start speed, they're struggling to keep their speed low enough as they go over the line. On the first day, we had, I think, 3 start penalties, but yesterday and today, hopefully, they'll have sorted that out. But it is a bit tricky when the speed is quite low, really, with a strong tailwind. So. And the speed is 170 kilometers per hour. Yeah. And of course, at launch time, the wind was 15 knots. So right. Doesn't give you much to play with. No, not really, no. I think Peter said he crossed the line yesterday at 60 knots. So. Yeah. Better than breaching the when you get a penalty, so you have no choice if you want to get a good score. Yeah, so for Australian pilots, I'm sure you know, but 60 knots is roughly 120 kilometres with a tailwind of another 20, so that makes you 140. So you were quite right. If you were at 70 kilometres, 70 knots, you wouldn't be far at all behind. Yeah. I mean, if you've got the option, you don't set a downwind leg, you set an end-wind leg, but we have the restrictions here of the airspace, and it forces us to go north-northeast. Anyway, it is interesting that they are staying so far west of track. I mean, there's a 10k maybe difference between them and the track. So it'll be interesting if the others stay on track, if they have a better run. Yes, you're talking about that convergence and the hill. We can look quickly at the map again.
Yeah.
You can see that they're at Seven Hill and the Clare. That's the range of hills, and they're to the west of the range of hills, in fact.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. That's the weather, and they're to the west of the range of hills, with the wind coming from the southeast. So a little bit, they're obviously finding that's obviously where the best air is.
I think so, yeah.
But with the wind coming from this direction, you know, you'd have to wonder why that would be, that the better air, the better position.
Well, with the sea breeze. The sea breeze comes up here, up the Gulf.
Okay.
The sea breeze comes up the Gulf and then turns in. So the two meet together.
Right. So you got the wind coming here, hitting the top of the hills here, but you got the sea breeze there, and that's
pulls a peak.
Where the peak is.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the northerly leg, they stay pretty much on track. It's blue, and unless there's a good reason on a blue day, you don't deviate. You do follow the direct line. Yep. But it looks as if there is a reason to deviate. I mean, it could be some cumulus there. They might have seen a line of Q if they're lucky, but it may just be that they've noticed that the wind is...
Or just wispy air in the convergence, in a bit of convergence.
Yeah,
on such a blue day, yes.
Yeah, in Australia we have certainly in South Australia, we have such dry air that often you can see haze domes, which is a little bit like the steam coming out of the kettle before you actually see the steam. You can just make out there's something there. And they're a great...
Now, what was that today is we're still getting some multiple tracks. As you can see, you got Papa Tango up there twice. But hopefully that aberration will take care of that tomorrow. But in any case, we can see that Pete Temple's latest position, it was only 17 seconds ago. So he did take stop for a small climb here, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
He only took one turn.
360.
Yeah, and he's headed off again. Yeah. Possibly because he knows he's got a posse on his back.
Possibly, yeah. So the other excitement yesterday, of course, was we have the fire bombers. For this, did you mention that already? Or, no?
We talked about their operations here, but not much.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a, what's the word? They were going to come in because there was a fire very close to the airfield while the guys were mid-task yesterday. But luckily that fire was put out before they arrived. Then there was a second fire, which was pretty large, wasn't it? You could see a huge cloud out to the west, and they came in to deal with that and did a few laps picking up their water and special chemicals that they use. But luckily for us, that was after the guys had finished, so we dodged that. That worked really well. Then we had the tug breakdown, and then we had the other tug breakdown. So, but today's a better day. The tug is reported to be doing well in the hospital, and the carburetor is due back tomorrow. So we should be back to full strength tomorrow on the tugs.
And our internet connection is fine, thankfully. And we've got proper tracking here, even if it is not quite as graphically as beautiful. We've still got everybody, and we know where they are.
So the other issue was that when the power went out, or the power spiked, I think is what happened, that upset everything. Something went a little bit wrong with the receiver here. So when we were looking at them yesterday, we were receiving them on the Wakery OGN.
Oh,
which is why the signal wasn't so strong. Yeah.
Right.
So
well, there you are.
See, technology is good when it works, but there's a lot of things that have to line up to make it work well. So.
Okay. Well, we've had, this is the third day of the racing. We're expecting 6 full days races, which is fantastic because a lot of competitions don't end up getting that many races, even here in Australia. So we've got 3 more races after today where we expect everything to start working really smoothly and the racing to really hot up. We're expecting similar weather tomorrow as today, but then the weekend looks like it should be very much stronger weather, we hope, and that will make for very interesting.
Yeah, I forget when it was done. There was a survey done of different airfields and different clubs around Australia, and Gawler had the most flyable days. They're not always very exciting days. They don't always have cumulus, but number of days that were flyable. I think Gawler was top of the league. Of course, it's much more fun to fly at Wakery, 15,000 feet under the cumulus, but you have to sit on the ground for maybe an extra day to get that, whereas here you probably fly every day.
Yes, and you don't always get cumulus at Wakery, or is that...
No. But it is nice when they're there.
When they do,
You just feel like you've got an engine. You just fly along 12,000, 13,000 feet and feel like you're cheating. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
But you also get conditions like that here at Gawler, with the troughs go through.
The good troughs, the good troughs, not the bad troughs. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So here we are going past they are going past Balaclava Airport.
And that, as I mentioned, is Bernadetti's home club. It's a winch club and quite busy. The air cadets are there. They own their own field, which is a great help to them. Yeah.
And then, no, sorry, that's another Hanley Bridge. So they're probably halfway down this track now, roughly.
Yeah, they've probably got 50, 60 k's to go, I guess. Yeah.
So if we call it 60k on that track, and then they got 13 at the end, they still got 75 kilometers to go. They started less than 2 hours ago, so they're a little bit slower on this track. Today's task, will just remind you of what today's task is. Those are the results from yesterday, for the overall results we were looking at. And then here's today's task coming up. So unfortunately I'm doing this from the web because we don't have the proper tracking.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to that in a second.
Yeah, the ambition with the Grand Prix, of course, is always to have a reasonably short race. It's supposed to be a gentleman's race, if you like, so that there's time to sit around and not be rushing all the time. And the race is all about the start and the finish. I think today we might have gone a little bit over the 2.5 hours that is the sort of sweet spot, the Goldilocks spot. But we'll see. If they speed up a bit, they might do it.
Yeah, it really depends upon this headwind. And they're still continuing to go even further west.
Yeah, well,
so they're clearly flying a line of energy. Whether they can see it or not, they're flying a line of energy out there. But they're really quite low down, but they don't seem to be descending. So it's clearly, I guess that really is it. They're on a convergence. They're not really going up, and they're not really stopping the climb, but they're not losing any altitude either.
So long as they notice when they get to the end and do something about it.
Yeah.
Because you can get a bit, not complacent, but you can sort of lose focus when it's easier and you're just going along in a straight line without too much effort. And sometimes you've got to change gear at the end, and it's knowing when to do that, isn't it? When to anticipate that you've got to be a bit more disciplined and fly in a different way when you get to the end of the convergence.
Yes. And they'll all be thinking ahead precisely that kind of moment, I think. They'll know what they're on now, but like all of us, all pilots should be doing, you're always flying the leg that you're on, whatever it is, and looking to the legs that are coming up.
Yeah, and the better pilots are much better at the big picture view and forming an image in their head of what's happening, what the weather is, and so on.
Yeah, anticipating, what are they going to do next? And Pete will be aware of this. He knows he's out the front. He knows he's got them very close behind. And he knows that at some point, either he and they are going to try and make a break for it to get away from the others to get across the line first. And it could be on a day like today that somebody takes a climb either too high or doesn't take a climb high enough.
Yes. And they always say in a climb it's the first person to leave that gets home first. So they'll know that too. But it's interesting that they look as if they're heading straight to the airfield, and they can't do that. They've got to go to the control point. I'm sure they know. I'm sure they've programmed the task correctly and their instruments have told them. But they do need to make a left turn at some point to go around the control point.
Yep.
And they'll be landing on a different runway today. I'm not sure if the webcams are back up and working or not. We've got webcams at Gawler, but they were down too with this power surge that we were dealing with for a couple of days, and I don't think they're back up yet. But on future days, you might be able to see them landing on the webcams or even launching on the webcams. So every previous day, they've landed towards the southwest, runway 23, but today we launched on 13, and we expect them to be landing on 13. So it'll be a slightly different circuit for them.
But the finish is the same, in fact.
Finish is the same,
which
every day.